I'm moving forward every day, Jesus. I just let him lead the way every second, every minute, every hour of the day. I'm moving with Jesus every day. 24/7 with Jesus every day. 24/7. With Jesus, I'm moving with Jesus every day.
One of the most fundamental of human questions is that of our identity. Who are we? Well, what of the subcategory of sexual identity? The search for sexual identity is at an all-time high. Have you heard it? Have you seen the search going on? Well, today we are going to look at this very important topic, the search for sexual identity. And to walk us through this, we've invited a professional psychiatrist, Dr. Sandra Reid. Dr. Reid, welcome to JC 24/7.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's always a pleasure having you share with our audience. Let's go directly to this. This is big. It's big here, there, and everywhere. Mm-hmm. Now, the church espouses heterosexual relationship, heterosexual marriage between one man and one woman. Mm-hmm. What really causes a man to be attracted to a woman and a woman to a man? Is this psychological, physiological, emotional? What goes on in this space?
Okay, a very interesting question, because as you say, that is accepted as the normal, man being attracted to woman. I would like to go back to the issue of creation.
Okay.
Because we are Christians, and when we speak on a topic as sensitive as one as sexual identity, we do have to remember where we are coming from.
Sure.
God made man and woman. And when Eve was presented to Adam, God said to them, "Go, be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth." Mm-hmm. That mandate in and of itself speaks to the fitness of purpose for man and woman.
Oh.
God created us to multiply. God created us to procreate. And to do that, there must be a man and a woman. That whole concept of heterosexuality, man and woman coming together to bring fruit. And that's why we accept it as normal, because it fits what God created us for.
So for the church actually considers alternative lifestyles, LGBTQIA, and the list goes on, as being not normal or, abnormal? How do you respond to that? Is it abnormal?
Okay. And again, these questions are just we have to be so careful in responding, because the term abnormal implies illness.
Okay.
Something is wrong. And it is certainly not a politically correct term.
All right.
The whole concept of alternative sexualities now embraces the fact that one could be LGBTQIA, right, and be normal. So we don't want to say it's abnormal, but we're looking again as Christians.
Right.
From the Christian perspective, and anything that deviates from that heterosexual attraction that God created us to have, we consider to be not acceptable.
Okay. So for the Christian who wants to respond in their day-to-day actions with people they meet from this community, these are important terms, you will say, for them to be aware of. The abnormal term, would they get in trouble for saying abnormal?
Well, and like I said, it certainly isn't politically correct. But there's a bit of a history there. The terminology amidst the alternative sexualities is it's difficult. It's hard to understand. There are terms that are accepted, terms that are stigmatizing, terms that are not accepted, right? And I think that it would do well for us to understand the terms and what they mean.
Okay.
So when we talk about LGB, we're talking about lesbian, gay, and bisexual. Those terms relate to our sexual orientation. Our sexual orientation is who we are attracted to sexually and emotionally, who we want to establish relationship with.
Okay.
And we have said before that God intended that to be man and woman.
Man and woman.
Right. And with LGB, it's different.
Okay.
Right? It's woman attracted to woman, man attracted to man, or attracted to either man or woman. That has to do with our sexual orientation. The G and the T, and the Q refer to the transsexuals, and the Q stands for queer, right? That has to do with our gender identity. Now that's different.
Okay.
It's different, and it's different also from our biological sex. So I've introduced 3 terms, and those 3 terms constitute our sexual identity.
Okay.
Right? So the first was our sexual orientation, who we attracted to
Sexual
sexually.
orientation.
Right? The second is our gender identity.
Gender identity.
Which is how we feel, whether we identify with femininity or masculinity, what we feel inside. It is not something that is measured.
Okay.
It is something that people report. I feel like a woman, or I feel like a man.
And you're saying this one is what?
Gender identity.
Gender identity.
So I identify with a female gender, or I identify with a male gender, right? And the third term is our biological sex, and that one is pretty standard. That's the one. When we usually talk about sex or gender, that's what we're talking about. That has to do with the chromosomes you're born with, the genitalia that you have, what you look like. XX chromosome equal a certain body appearance equals I identify as a woman. XY is a man, right? Now, in the scheme of things, the way we were created, our biological sex, our gender identity, and our sexual orientation follow the way God intended. I was born female. I identify as female. I'm attracted to a man. Okay. All right? But with the transgender people, I am born female, but I feel male.
Okay.
Or on the converse, I was born male, but I feel female.
Okay. Doc, the average person on the street who has to live around and within the association of people of the LGBTQ community, the average person just lumps it all together.
Right.
So are you saying that even for the average person, these distinctions are important?
Yeah, I would say yes. I mean, not to harp on it, right? Because I think most people understand the concept of orientation, sexual orientation, homosexuality, and so on.
Right.
But I think it's important for people to understand the transgender.
Okay.
Because the transgender is the one who, while they appear to be of a certain sex, they feel like another sex, and that creates problems, psychological problems that are described as gender dysphoria. And that gender dysphoria can lead to pretty drastic actions.
So I know you've gone through what they are. Let's crystallize it for our audience. So we have L, because there are people out there who they've heard these terms for the longest while, here, there, and everywhere, and are still at a loss as to who is who, what is what, and might not be able to engage people of this community in a healthy manner because of ignorance as to what is what. So we said LGBTQ. L,
lesbian. G,
gay.
B, bisexual. All of which are different sexual orientation. And I use the term different. Notice I haven't said abnormal. Different sexual orientation.
And then you make the distinction between these three versus or in comparison to the next TQ.
That's right.
Right.
T, transsexual. Right. So I look a certain way based on my biology, but I feel and identify with the opposite gender opposite sex.
Okay.
I look male, but I identify as female.
Okay. So transgender?
Yes, transgender.
Transgender.
And the Q is queer. Now, we don't want to burden the audience with too many terms and all of that, right?
But they're hearing it.
But they're hearing
so
it,
it's good
right?
for them to know.
Exactly.
Yes.
So when we talk about biological sex, they're just two, male, female.
Right.
Apart from some abnormal...
There are variations.
Yes, right?
Okay.
But generally, you're either male or female, right? When you talk about gender, you could identify as male, you could identify as female, so that's binary too. But you could also identify as neither. You could identify as both, right? So it's fluid.
A lot of identities.
That's right. The gender is fluid, right? And because of that, the term used is non-binary.
Okay.
There's more than two.
All right.
Not just female gender, male gender. There's female, male, both, none. And the term queer is used. Some people think it's stigmatizing. Some people think it's okay to describe the non-binary gender identity.
Okay.
So I hope I haven't confused our audience.
I hope not. I hope that they're clear.
Yes.
Because we want the clarity. This is not going anywhere.
Right.
It's not going away.
Yes.
It's in our society.
That's right.
And so we want our audience to be able to understand
Yes.
as we live with each other in this world.
That's correct.
You mentioned a while ago, I can't remember the exact words that but you were talking about the whole tension. Is it confusing? The whole package of all these identities that we must now cheat with. Is it confusing and can we blame people who are confused as to?
We certainly can't blame. It is confusing because when we think, okay, so the older person, older generation,
Right.
Male and female,
Yes.
right? And I'm a psychiatrist. Many of these conditions that are now being espoused as normal were actually psychiatric illnesses or
Is that so?
considered. That's correct. Let's go far back. Homosexuality, for example.
Right.
Homosexuality was considered a psychiatric illness
Yes,
at a point
at
in
one
time.
point, yes,
Right?
sure.
And the homosexual community lobbied together and they presented tons of data that showed that gay persons were no different in terms of their psychological adaptation and psychological challenges compared to heterosexual people. And that was a convincing enough argument for that label of illness to be dropped from homosexuality.
Okay.
Now, transsexuals, according to psychiatric terminology, suffer from an illness called gender identity disorder, right? So now you find that the LGBTQ community, they don't like certain terms because some of those terms are throwback to this psychiatric illness.
Okay.
And of course, now these are alternative sexualities. They're no longer considered as illness, right? So the terms are confusing. The people are confused because now you have so many options.
Right.
And with social media, the options are up in your face.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you have a little bit of confusion about where you're at. And instead of sitting and thinking it through, you have somebody in a TikTok saying, hey,
Right.
you must be you must be queer.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
Interesting. And you just said that they don't all like all the terms,
Right.
all the labels.
Right.
Let me ask, who assigned the labels?
Now, that's an interesting question. That's a very interesting question.
Is it the community or is it the medical field? Is it, who?
At the beginning, it would have been the medical field.
Right.
Homosexuality, medical.
Right.
Gender identity disorder, medical, right? But somehow there was that transition to alternative sexualities. My guess is that the communities themselves would have determined what were acceptable terminologies and what are not.
As they build their culture,
as they build the
morphs
culture. That's right. And you want to move away from what labels as mental illness. So that becomes the stigmatized terms because nobody wants to think that their expression of sexuality is an illness.
Right. Wow, interesting stuff there. We're going to take a break here, folks. Stay with us. We're coming right back.
Yes, I do believe. Why? My answer will be that some people like the same gender.
Okay, no. I don't think God doesn't make mistakes. That's to start with. And that's why he created male and female. So I don't think that they will have same desires. If that is the case, it means that there's a flaw in creation.
No, I do not believe that persons can be born with same-sex desires. I think that's an agenda, actually, that is propagated by the media. You know, we see it, and it seems to be just something that is generally being accepted by mostly everyone today. But no, personally, I don't believe so.
Is it possible? Yes, it is. Because of the sin factor that we are living in, things are not all black and white, although they are. The alcoholic child have been born with the tendency due to what their moms or their father was indulged in. At the same time, the tendencies of a person going towards whether homosexual or lesbian tendencies was not in God's creation.
No, I don't believe someone is born with same-sex desires. I believe it's acquired through as they grow, through interaction with others, what they learn at home, what they see on the media. So no, I do not believe someone is born with same-sex desires.
Like Josanne, I also don't agree that persons are born with same-sex desires. There's based on nature versus nurture. It is based on the environment that that child is exposed to while growing that helps with engendering or making that decision on that child's sexual preference.
Welcome back. We are talking on the subject of identity, the search for sexual identity. And we have Dr. Sandra Reid, who is here doing a fine job in really helping me to appreciate this search. Thank you for helping me, and I'm sure you're helping others out there. There is still this ongoing debate as to whether a person can be born gay. Doc, can a person be born gay?
Yeah. Let me be honest and say I don't know the answer to that question conclusively because the evidence is not out there.
Okay.
There is some evidence that suggests, yes, that homosexuality may have a hereditary component. And that's basically based on observations that within a family, you may have more than one gay person and, therefore it suggests that kind of genetic component. But no gene has been found yet that could be described as a homosexual gene. A lot of times you do find, however, that there are psychological challenges that a child may have experienced which somehow interfere with their sexual identification. And I'm referring here specifically to experiences like child sexual abuse. So I'm not saying that it occurs for all persons, but certainly in some people, that is a contributor to the whole same-sex sexual attraction. So it's still, the reason for homosexuality is still not known conclusively.
Okay. Well, thank you for that honesty, because it really is being touted all over the place as the very, very strongly.
Right. But I will say, though, even though I can't say that people are born gay, from my experience working with people who express a sexual orientation of a homosexual nature, some of them are so conflicted, so challenged by the idea that this is happening to them, that I have been convinced that people do not choose to be gay. It is something that they really do not have control over.
All right. Yeah. Fair enough. Trapped in the wrong body. We've heard this over and over. I'm trapped in the wrong
Yes.
body.
Yes.
You are the psychiatrist here. Help us.
Yes.
What actually goes on? Can you tell us what goes on in the mind of a person who feels like they've been born in the wrong body?
Yes. And if we reflect on what we shared before, we're talking about those people who have gender identity difficulty. They are experiencing gender dysphoria. Dysphoria means distress. I'm uncomfortable. I'm unhappy. Hence, I'm trapped, right? Trying to put myself in the mind of someone like that, is the best way to do that is for me to tell you what people with gender identity problems have told me.
I've said.
All right? So they are in a physical body which suggests a certain, not suggests, but which is of a biological sex, a certain biological sex. But everything else about them points to them identifying with the other sex, the opposite sex. So they look male, but based on the social and cultural influences around them, they identify as female, they feel female, they want to live as a female, they just feel female.
True,
and
true.
That true. And they, because they're in a male body, they cannot function the way a female would because society frowns on that. So they literally feel trapped.
Okay.
And that's called gender dysphoria.
Gender dysphoria.
And it's the hallmark of somebody who, it's still on the psychiatric books, even though, as I say, it's politically incorrect to say so, but that's the hallmark of someone who suffers from a gender identity disorder.
Is there a need here for, at that point in a person's life, well, not the person who is there, but just generally speaking, is there a need for caution, maybe for the person who just gets up one morning and he is male or she's female, and somehow just out of the ordinary, they just feel like the opposite sex? Is this enough to say, well, I am? Yeah. Is this enough to say, well, I am suffering from that dysphoria, or I really am trapped here?
Yeah.
Or is it a lot more than that?
Pastor Frank, that is such an excellent question. I think it's so important, that question that you just asked. The concept of gender dysphoria is a pervasive thing. You don't just feel it one day or for a few days and then you're okay. Gender dysphoria means that, like, remember you used the term true and true just now?
Yes.
Every living moment is hell. That's what the gender dysphoria is like.
It plagues you.
It plagues you. So it's not anything to be taken lightly. However, gender identity disorder is not the only cause of gender dysphoria.
Okay.
There are many people who feel plagued, but for different reasons. And where I think society seems to be making a terrible mistake is the easy and early label of trans on young people who have this experience. So let's look at some possibilities. Let's take a female, a young lady, who has gone through puberty early. So she has, her chest is developed, her hips are developed, she's menstruating, but none of her peers around her are having those experiences. Her family may not treat with her kindly. They may call her all sorts of names. I mean, sometimes in families, we say things and we don't understand the emotional impact. So she may be called names and things may be suggested to her. You're ready to do this and you're ready to do that. And she may be in distress because she has become feminine too early. Right? She may resent being a female, but that doesn't mean she wants to be a male. But I referenced the TikTok videos, and she looks at a TikTok video, and some young person is saying, I don't like being female, I'm a man in a woman's body.
And that influences her.
And that influences her. And these things do happen. These things are real. So when we talk about gender identity disorder, it is absolutely important to ensure that the young person is not having anxiety. They may be on the autistic spectrum and therefore have discomfort with themselves and others. They may even be psychotic and hearing voices telling you, you're a man, you're a woman.
So is it then that they need a different kind of help Professional help, of course,
Yeah.
but not to cheat with the dysphoria. They're actually wrestling with something else, is it? Or that too is the dysphoria, or that causes dysphoria?
That causes the dysphoria. So it's important to find out the reason for the dysphoria. There's a disturbing trend that's happening around the world, right? Where a young child, a child who doesn't have the capacity to make huge decisions about their bodies, a young child says, I think the opposite sex trapped in my body. And they are being recommended for surgical treatment, which is the treatment for gender identity disorder, right?
Wow.
To remove vital organs, making that decision at an age where they don't even have the cognitive capacity to do it. It is imperative before anybody puts a knife to a child to determine whether that gender dysphoria is caused by something else and to fix that something else.
But is it safe to have these children making these kind of decisions?
Not at all. Not at all. The brain matures at 25, right? In most countries, 18 is the age given to adults. And now in the United States, these surgeries are being done on children as young as 12.
Wow.
Right? So it's not good practice.
Oh wow, there's a lot for children to be dealing with. There's a lot for people who are going through the distresses that we're talking about here to be dealing with.
That's correct.
Need some kind of intervention. What would be the appropriate response from the church and from Christians when dealing with people of the LGBTQ community?
Right. We have to be careful not to be judgmental. That may be our natural tendency. You are doing wrong, so we might be inclined to judge. That's what we do not want. We have to treat with these persons with the love and compassion that we treat with anybody else. All right? They are God's children as well. However, I think it's important that we as Christians, where our whole understanding of sex and sexuality is grounded in the Bible and what God says, that we do not tolerate the behaviors. There should be no compromise in that regard. So, as I said, you accept the sinner, but not the sin.
Right.
And we have to help. And we could help by being educated.
Okay.
So, for all ideas, for education, and also to understand that a person may desire change, but it doesn't mean that you're going to go from thinking that you are transgender today to being absolutely heterosexual tomorrow. It's a process. It's a series of change and setbacks and change. Like any one of us. Exactly. I mean, I've been trying to exercise. You exercise, you drop off, you go back. All of us who try to make change. And we have to be patient and understanding. I think what we're looking for is the person's desire to do what is right. And once that is there, we should be supportive.
And work with them.
And work with them. And pray for them.
Yes.
Pray for them.
Certainly. So, would you say that a person who is gay can experience conversion? Or one might even argue, is there a need for conversion for somebody who's gay?
Right. Well, the need for conversion goes right back again to, as Christians, and everybody ought to appreciate Christ and what he did to save us. We really want to please God. And if we want to please God, we live according to what he says. So there is that need for conversion, right? And I like your choice of word, because conversion therapy is a psychological intervention that is frequently used. It's harmful, right? If people could have chosen to be heterosexual, they wouldn't have been homosexual in the first place. So the concept of conversion therapy, it can be very traumatizing.
Can you briefly describe that for our audience?
Well, it's a therapeutic interaction that aims to change your orientation, right? I can't give you the details because it's more in the sphere of the psychologist. But the goal is to change your orientation. And my experience with persons with homosexual orientation, many of them are distressed by their experience. And if they could have changed, they would have changed, right? But conversion can take place through the Word of God. And that's where I say we can pray for persons who desire that change, right? Because God's Word tells us that nothing is impossible with him.
Nothing.
With him, he is able to do all things.
All things.
And I have interacted with persons who have said to the Lord, hey, this is who I am. We don't want to run away from who we are. This is who I am. I'm attracted to somebody of the same sex. I think I'm a man trapped in a woman's body. This is who I am, Lord. But I don't want to be like this. Please change me.
Wow.
And he will never neglect to answer that prayer.
That's powerful.
You know?
That is powerful.
Yeah.
That is powerful. And they turn into the right source. That's the best conversion that anyone can experience.
Correct. That's correct.
The conversion Jesus offers.
That's correct.
Dr. Reid, man, you've really helped my mind. And I imagine you have helped so many people who are viewing this
I hope
to bring clarity to this subject. I know that there's so much more we can expand on.
Yes, that's right.
Maybe at another time we will continue this. There's part 2, in fact, coming up when we would continue talking about the journey or the search for sexual identity.
Yes.
Thank you for being with us.
Yes, thank you very much for having me.
Audience, you've heard it. We thank God that no matter what the problem that we are plagued with in our identity, our true identity is in Christ. And if any man is in Christ, he is a new creation. And so there is hope for every single one of us for whatever the challenge, whether it be sexual identity or any other obstacle to our true identity in Christ. Continue to trust him and search for him, that you would find your true identity in him. Thank you so much for being with us. Until next time, I'm Pastor Kishford Frank, wishing you all the best by the grace of God from all of us here at JC 24/7. May God bless you. Remember, you can view this again on our YouTube channel, JC 24/7. God bless you. Take care.